Like many of you, I'm proud to be an American, but most importantly, I'm proud to be a father and husband, which means it's my duty to protect my family no matter what circumstances are thrown my way, which is why I rely on my Patriot Supply. This month, their mega 3-month emergency food kit comes jam-packed with 33 varieties of filling and delicious foods. Not only does that include creamy chicken flavored rice, old-fashioned Italian spaghetti, and savory, cheesy broccoli soup, but you will also get a bonus protein kit with diced beef, flavorful chicken chunks, and 3 varieties of beans, plus 9 different fruits, vegetables, and snacks. All in all, this emergency food kit provides a whopping 2,500 calories per day and keeps you well fed and ready for anything. The way I see it, it's my solemn duty as an American and father and husband to protect my family without waiting for handouts. And that starts with food you can depend on that lasts up to 25 years. If you go to preparewitheddy.com right now, you can save up to $300 on your mega 3-month emergency food kit. It ships fast and free. Once again, that's preparewitheddy.com and save up to $300 on your mega emergency food kit supply. Thank you and God bless.
Welcome to Shoot Me Straight, Dave Fields, Eddie Gallagher. Today we're here with Kendra Gracia. She is real active in helping out people that have been trafficked, and that everywhere from strip clubs to just women in bad situations. I don't think it's just trafficking, is it?
I work a lot with just abused women, domestic violence, sexual exploitation, and trafficking.
Yeah, and she's also helped a lot of police departments, does a lot of speaking, but she has a really incredible story, which I know the 30,000-foot view of it, and I'm excited to hear the details of it. So let's start off with just where you grew up, relationship with your parents, stuff like that.
I grew up on the Chicago area. My parents were pastors. So for the first, 13 years of my life, it was all church and ministry and VBS and Bible camp. Yeah. And that was just kind of how it was. I went to a school kind of not in the best part of the area, but around 11 years old, my mom pulled us out to homeschool us. So I was a homeschool kid. And then around 14, I just started getting into a lot of trouble.
Gotcha. Did you have siblings?
I have 2 older sisters.
Okay.
I was the baby.
Was there a reason your mom pulled you out of school to homeschool you?
Well, my dad planted a church around that time. Mm-hmm. So we kind of went from like the south side to the north side. And she just didn't want us integrated in the public school systems.
Because of what was being taught or put out or anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think she had a lot of fear.
Oh. Wow. So what denomination?
Just like non-denomination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all did
We're Christian.
Christian.
We love Jesus.
Did y'all did you do the Wednesday, Sunday? I mean, was it people
growing
at your
up?
house?
Yes, but once my dad planted the church, it was just Sundays. But they now run like one of the largest food pantries. So they're at church like 7 days a week now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I hear that. You hear that a lot with like preachers' kids. They get so involved in ministry that, doing good things to like, not saying they're at fault, but just doing good things and it being a neglect almost to the kids.
To the kids. Yeah. Pastor kids have a rep for a reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that because because your parents are so invested in what they're doing?
I think so. They're just very immersed. And I talk to a lot of pastor kids, and we all have the same kind of anthem growing up that the church was the family, not us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So you think that had an effect on you? Like you said, started getting in trouble at 14, going out. Were you like sort of rebelling?
I was an attention seeker, 100%. Yeah.
So what were the type of things you were doing, like going out and getting in trouble?
It's like everything. It starts off small, right? Just, sneaking out of the house, running away, going to parties, drinking. And it progressed as the more people I met and the more trauma that happened to me.
Yeah.
So while you were doing that, how did your parents handle that?
Not well.
Yeah.
My mom called the police on me all of the time. Me and the police were like on a first name basis. They would pick me up, bring me back home.
As a runaway?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I relate.
My dad was very gentle. He's a very humble man and kind-hearted. He's like Jesus. He's very, very much. My mom,
Yeah.
her and I, we would go like toe-to-toe all the time, screaming matches. I've like threatened to light the house on fire.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I can see it. Yeah. I have a daughter as well. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, she's awesome. She's a gem, but yeah, when her and my wife go at it, it's like the boys in the house are like, and let's go find something else to do.
It's scary.
Yeah. Not getting involved in this.
I'm so glad I have a son.
So 14, what's the next like life thing that you remember going through that?
So around 14, I went to church camp, which was like a mandatory every summer. And I met a boy who was at camp, and he was gang affiliated. His parents were in a gang. His grandma sent him to church camp. And so him and I started dating, and in order to get involved in the gang, you have to be jumped in, and that was raped in for girls. So I got raped in to the gang. And then
By him?
No, by another gang member. And after that, I really just went down a dark path of drugs. So I was doing a lot of drugs and experimenting with pretty much anything I get my hands on. Drinking a lot. I was taking the train to different cities and gone for weeks at a time. And then when that all became too heavy for me, around 16 years old, I flew to Florida, just moved.
By yourself?
Yep.
How'd you get the money and everything to?
I had money from selling drugs.
Okay. What part of Florida?
I moved to Destin, Florida. I had family there. I tried to like squat at their house for a while, but I was too messed up. So I ended back on the streets, living in a car.
Gotcha. Did you at that time ever like put the pieces together of, hey, the rape
No.
had a huge effect of how come I'm going downhill? I'm trying to. Yeah.
And I think the catalyst thing for me, like a seed that was planted in my soul, was the man who raped me. After he was finished, he like grabbed my face and was like, remember, this is your worth. This is what you're good for. And that stuck with me. That was like my theme song for a decade.
Jeez. What was like going back to that? Like, I mean, obviously you had a boyfriend. He was like, hey, you want to be part of this gang? You got to get jumped or raped in.
Yeah,
like,
he didn't tell me. He just said, if you want to be a part of it, you have to do what it takes to be a part of it. And I said, okay.
You're just like, yeah, I'm on board.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't see it. I didn't know it was coming.
And then afterwards, did you stay with that guy? Like, yeah. And was there any amount of respect he showed to you for doing it, or was it almost like, yeah, you're nothing?
That was still nothing. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that was like different is I got to wear their colors and move drugs for them.
It's crazy.
No.
And nobody knew this was going on. Like nobody in my family.
No.
Mm-mm.
So did they even know you were dating this guy, or
No.
had any idea that you were moving drugs or selling drugs or even doing drugs? No.
My mom suspected. Like she would, when the police would bring me home, she's like, drug tester, take her away and drug tester. So there was that.
At that time, did you even think of it as rape? Yeah, that's what I was.
No, not at all. I didn't know I was assaulted. I just thought it was what you did. I thought it was what I was good for.
Yeah.
So you were living with that. Obviously, you came down to Destin.
Yes. Yes.
Living on the streets or in your car, still in that mindset. So you're pretty much like, hey, I'm worthless, or I'm not really worth.
My hope of coming here was just to really cut ties with all the gangs and start fresh. But as you know, like you can run from problems, but the problem is you. It comes with you, you know.
Yeah.
So because I didn't take care of that trauma, it was still inside of me. So I was still kind of searching for my family in a sense, because that was really all I wanted. I wanted my parents. I had daddy issues, even though he was a great father, but I just wanted that attention. So I was working at a coffee shop, and I met an older man And he was very, like, obsessive with me. He was just buying me things, giving me hotel rooms, you know, buying my clothes, paying my bills. And over time, I gained his trust, probably like 6 months over time of just us being friends. He invited me to come work for him. So he owned, I think, a strip club or worked at a strip club in Fort Walton. And I was too young to work at the club, but he said I could work at yacht parties or house parties as the entertainment, serving drinks to the men.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed to do that, and when I would go there, I would black out. And I've already been doing drugs and drinking for a while. It was very uncommon for me to black out. So I was like waking up confused, and he was just like, "Oh, you just had so much fun. You were doing so many shots. You're fine. You're fine." And I'm like, "I don't have any money." And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, you spent it all. You were buying Molly and this and that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, like that sounds like me, so okay."
Yeah.
And so I didn't think much of it until one night I was at a house party and I blacked out again, and I was waking up. I was like coming back in conscious, and I saw him men handing him money to come rape me. So he was trafficking me. Mm-hmm. And so that lasted for a couple months. And then one day he just kind of dropped me in a parking lot at Walmart. And I was like, I can't go back to this because I'm not getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you? Were you living with him at the time?
No, I was living in my car in hotels, and sometimes I'd stay at his house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what? After he dropped you in the Walmart,
I just
parking lot?
never contacted him again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, at that time, even think of the word trafficking?
No, I had no idea what trafficking was. I didn't know I was being trafficked. I was just like, this is BS. Like, I'm not getting paid for anything.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought I was getting ripped off.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I didn't enjoy the fact that strangers were having sex with me, but I was more, like, pissed about my money. Because I think that's your mindset when you're in addiction and when you're just messed up. Like, you don't really care about yourself.
Yeah.
But you care about survival.
Yeah. Or getting money to get that
Yes.
next high. Or,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, did you think like your main issue was drugs and alcohol, or?
No, I did drugs, but that wasn't my goal to do drugs. Like, I did drugs if we were partying, and again, it was like Molly, cocaine. Like, I wasn't, shooting up heroin or anything. Thank God I didn't get that deep in. But that was more just so I could have fun because I was so depressed. I knew if I took this pill, if I snorted this, I would be fun.
Yeah.
And if I was fun, people would like me.
Yeah. Your main goal was during that time where if I have this amount of money, then I'll be okay, or then I'll be good. Or
the money was more of so I could buy shoes. Because I wanted to look good. My appearance was everything at that time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So you were seeking attention.
Yes.
That's.
Oh, yes.
Which
100%.
sounds like it comes from.
Not having enough as a
Yes,
child.
like we talked about earlier, your parent, not blaming your parents, but
Right.
your parents giving everything to the church, and like this is family, and
Yeah.
it's really you sort of get left to the wayside a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, now that I'm a parent, I get it. But as a child, when it's your birthday and somebody calls your dad because they're in the hospital and your dad leaves, you're like, well, screw that. Like,
Yeah,
you're
this is-
picking them over me,
This is my day.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of that kind of mentality growing up.
Yeah. That's tough. That's tough because your parents think they're doing
Good.
God's,
Right. God's
and they
work.
are in a sense, but
It's
that's not
the
engaging.
typical parent struggle, I think, where it's
Finding that
you
balance.
Yeah, finding that balance, and you can be a good parent, and you think you can have all the right values, but then if you're especially if you're working and trying to provide,
Right.
and you're going to put that over top of
Right.
your actual family, and you justify it in your head like, hey, I'm doing this to provide for them, but in reality, I mean, now because I have 3 kids and I can relate, they want like
Your time.
your focus, your
Right.
time, and it's little things that matter.
Yes.
That sometimes, and I've made those mistakes too as a parent, where
Yeah.
you just don't think about it until
Yeah.
you actually sit down and talk to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely too. I try to always balance, like, okay, yes, I want to help the woman, but I also, my first ministry is my home,
Yeah.
taking care of my son.
Yeah. So you were, how old were you when you got dropped off in the Walmart parking
So that
lot?
was I was probably 18. Well, maybe close to 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that, I I was living with a military man, and he was getting orders for Alaska. So I married him, moved to Alaska with him. I got pregnant, and that just like right when I got pregnant, it just fell apart.
Is it Air Force?
He was Army.
Army?
Yes. And so we just kind of parted ways. And then I was up in Alaska, same situation, but now I have a newborn. So I ended up I ended up in the strip club so I could provide. Because I didn't have a high school diploma at the time. I didn't have any kind of on-the-job training. What was I going to put? Sell drugs?
Yeah.
Well, like you said, your belief at that time was my worth is
Yes.
sex or like what I can give.
Mm-hmm.
What part of Alaska?
It was Anchorage.
Anchorage, okay. Been there a couple times. That's
Yeah. It's pretty.
It's a little bit different than Destin.
yeah.
It's a little bit.
How was it being up there? I mean, besides like, the struggle, I mean, because I know when I've been there, like as far as the Alaskan people, they're really not too friendly with like outsiders, right?
No, and I kind of stayed to my own little world of the people I knew in the clubs. But it was definitely completely different. I grew up in the city, and then in Florida, and then I'm in the woods. Like it's a whole different lifestyle. So it took some adjusting, definitely. But I mean, I kind of miss it.
Yeah.
How big is Anchorage?
I'm not
Is
positive.
it the biggest city in Alaska?
I don't know if it's Anchorage or Juneau.
Okay. But it's probably, biggest city's probably, a couple of 100,000 maybe?
Maybe.
I mean, for the big city, like it is one of the bigger cities in Alaska, but it's
But it's
compared
still
to
tiny.
everywhere else, you're like, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
It's all trees and mountains. And
Did you take up hunting or anything when you
I
were there?
did, actually. I learned how to hunt, fish,
It's a place to do it.
bow and arrows, shoot guns, all that kind of stuff.
Really? That's cool. Yeah. I mean, that's a rough country or a rough state.
It is. It's a different mindset of living.
Yeah. And how did you deal like with the
winter.
or like it's daylight
Oh, my
23
gosh,
hours
so
or nighttime 23 hours?
My dad actually flew up with me because I was pregnant. And I had like weird anxiety flying that something was going to happen to the baby. So he flew with me, and when we landed, it was 3:00 in the morning, but it was bright out. And I was like, I think our clocks are wrong. I think it's 3, in the afternoon. And I was so confused because I didn't know that. I didn't know because I didn't go to school.
Even if you went to school, they don't teach you much about Alaska.
No.
In the summertime, it's only a few hours of darkness. Right?
Yeah.
And then in the winter, it's only a few hours of sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah, that throws you off for sure.
Yeah, in the winters, you spent 4 years there, is that right? Ish?
About 4 or 5, yeah.
In the winters, was it so depressing having...
It was extremely depressing because it was always dark.
Yeah, the suicide rate there is pretty high.
Oh, it's crazy high.
Because of that.
And drinking and all of that.
Yeah.
A lot of they still have a lot of dry tribes where alcohol is illegal.
Really?
It's such a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so I was a dancer there after I got separated, and another military guy came along, and he was really nice, and I really fell in love with him. Like I really had the emotional attachment to a person. Like I thought he was God. He was just extremely incredible and amazing, and he's the one who taught me how to fish and hunt and survive and all of that. But it went really bad really quick and got really dark. He's the one who held me captive for 4 years in the woods. Yeah. So go ahead.
All right, so now we just took
We took a dark turn.
a dark turn or a crazy turn. So he held you captive in the woods for 4 years.
That is correct.
How did he get to that?
So I ended up moving in with him, and he didn't like that I was a dancer. And he was the one who was like, you're a mom. You have so much more worth than that. And I was like, oh, my God, this man loves me.
Yeah.
And so I came home one day, and he burned all of my stripper clothes and my shoes. They were all just, like, burned to ashes. And so I freaked out and I was like, I'm moving home. I hate you. And we got into a physical altercation. And then after that, he was like, you're not going anywhere. Like, you belong with me.
So how did he, okay, so you belong with me. How did he keep you captive?
He literally physically held me captive. Like, he got rid of my phone. There was a point I was handcuffed to him if I would run away.
Really?
I would get punished if I ran away.
And you had your child with you at this time?
Yeah.
How did he deal with that?
Oh, he loved my kid. He was great to him.
But your kid
was
was
great.
My kid was like
at the time.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this guy, he would take care of your child and do all the things a man is supposed to do, but then at the same time, he's not. So were you not allowed to leave the house?
No.
Nothing.
No, and eventually we didn't have a house, so we lived literally in the woods.
Like tents?
In a tent?
Yes.
Was he? So was he active duty military at this time?
Not at the time.
Okay, so he got out and then
Yes.
became a
Yeah.
weirdo in the woods, living in a tent.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild,
It
Kendra.
got hot in here.
Yeah, you're good. That's wild.
Yeah. I can laugh about it now because it's ironic and funny. I don't think people understand, and this is a story with a lot of survivors, that they love their abusers and traffickers. Like, I wasn't always bound to him physically, but like in my head I was. So you can't escape that because you feel so attached to that person, trauma bonded to that person, that you feel like if I leave, I will actually die.
And was it also like if I leave, like worried about your child too?
I was worried
as
about
well?
everything.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So 4 years of just being held captive in a house, and then was it an actual like tent that you lived in?
Yeah, we lived in tents or slept in our trucks.
Dang.
Do
Yeah.
you think some of that he thought of himself as, okay, now I have to? Do you think he thought he was doing something wrong, or do you think he thought, hey, I'm trying to help her?
I think that's
She
how
doesn't
it
need to be a
started.
stripper.
Yes, I think that's how it started. I really think he had like a savior complex, and he just wanted to save me. And I think his mindset was I was more of a danger to myself, and I would get back into that lifestyle without him. And the way he could do that was to control me.
Yeah. That's
what I
what
think,
well,
at
that's what it
least.
sounds like. Is
Yes.
he might have had a savior complex and was like, I'm doing this to save, but I think it sounds like that turned into, no, I'm in control
Yes.
and you're not doing anything unless I say so.
Yes.
That is crazy. I mean, was there any attempts like during those 4 years, like, hey, I want to leave. I don't want to, like, can you let me go?
Yeah.
Not really down with the tent.
I'm
and
not,
truck.
wasn't a very
Can
like.
we upgrade this
Yes.
house?
I'm not, since childhood, I was not a submissive person. That's just not in me. And so I didn't like being told what to do. And so I would fight him a lot. And this dude was like, he's ex-military. He was a big dude, 6-something and all tatted up and all muscles. And at the time, I'm coming off of drugs and everything. I'm like 110 pounds.
Sure.
I would try to fight him. And it didn't go well.
Would he fight, like,
Oh,
hit you
yeah.
back?
Oh, he fought me like a man.
I wouldn't say like a man, but he
Well,
fought
you know
you.
what I mean. As if I was
Well,
a man.
Yeah. That's hate that.
Pretty wild.
So when did it? So out of those 4 years, when did it come to a point where it's like, how'd you get out of that?
So we actually had to relocate to North Carolina because I would get away sometimes, but I would go back because I had what else? I had nowhere to go. And I was I don't like using the word brainwashed, but that's what it was. I was so brainwashed into believing I could not live without him. Every decision I made up until this point was wrong. Because he would lay out my life in front of me and be like, look at how much you effed up. You need me. You need me. So I was like, oh, dang, I need him.
He was manipulating.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would leave. I would come back. Very rarely I could actually leave. I think he more like let me believe I left. But anyway, so I would come back. Eventually, the police did get involved because they saw a physical altercation go down. And so we ended up relocating to North Carolina. We lived in a little hunting cabin in the woods again, ironically. And one day he left, which was very rare for me to be left alone. But he left, and he left his phone, which again, that never happened. And I was just like, this is an act of God. And up until this point, I really lost my faith in God. But at that moment, I was like, okay, God, if you're real, like you're gonna do me a solid. So I got the phone and I called my father. It's the only number I knew. Why I didn't call 911, I don't know. I was too scared. I called my father, who was in Chicago, and I was like, come get me. So my parents arranged to leave immediately, and within like a day or two, they were there, and they took me out, me and my son and my dog.
Was that the first time that you had like told your parents like, "Hey, you need to come get me. This isn't right," or did you talk to them
I had
before?
very sporadic, maybe like 2 or 3 conversations with them throughout those whole 4 years. And the time previous I would talk to them, he was right there, and he was like, don't tell them what's going, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm holding a gun to your head, you better behave, kind of an ordeal. So that was the first time that I was just like, I'm so broken. Like, just take care of me. So they came and got me, and I moved back home with them in Chicago, and it was a very weird healing transition because I was such an independent person since, like I said, since childhood. I was like the 4-year-old who was crossing the street, and my parents like, where is she? Like, independence was just who I was. But when I came home after that, I was terrified to leave my father's sight. I wouldn't go to the grocery store alone. I didn't want to leave home.
Were you scared that he was going to show up?
I was just scared of everything. I was scared of myself.
Yeah. After you left, after your parents came and got you, did this guy try and like contact you?
He did. I actually had to go and get a restraining order.
And then was anything done to him? Like,
No.
even after you told your parents, or did you tell law enforcement?
There's no proof. This is why victims don't go to the law enforcement. If you don't have substantial proof, they don't do much.
Yeah. Like, even if you had a black eye or broken arm, there's like, okay, we can't prove
You
that
give
it
them,
was
they
from...
can get a restraining order, and that's it. Yeah. Even with the victims I help now, survivors I help now, that's all they get. Maybe he'll spend a night in jail. Maybe.
Yeah.
But they're probably afraid it's going to piss them off more.
Right. And what's a restraining order? It's a piece of paper.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but that is how the system works, you know, because, you know, go off on a tangent or off topic. But yeah, my daughter had a stalker, was like 3 or 4 years ago when she was working at Blue Mabel. There was a guy coming in, real grown man. She was 16 at the time, was like dropping off flowers and like, I want to take you out and this and that. And
Start it for me.
So she brought it home and she was scared.
She made it clear to him.
She was nice to him.
Didn't.
But she
was nice to him, and she was like, but then I think that's what invited him, you know, and more to actually try and pursue her. And then he left a card with his number on it, like, hey, call me, I want to take you out. So she showed that to me, and I called him, and I was like, she's 16, stay away from her. And then he told me to go fuck myself.
No.
So then we ended up calling, the cops had to get called.
Cool.
Yeah, well, they showed up at my house, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do? Like, this guy knows where she works, and that's the same. They're like, well, there's nothing we can do. Like, we can get a restraining order. And I was like, okay. And then they said, but in order to get a restraining order, you have to give him your address. He has to know where she lives. And I was like, how does that make sense if he's not stopping from going to her workplace? What makes you think
he's going to not show up?
And they're like,
here.
well, if he shows up here at your house, then you can call us. And I was like, if he shows up here, dude, he's going to be dead on my front lawn. Like, and that's where we're at. And I was like, so then I'm going to be in trouble? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's where I'm like, this system is skewed.
It's very broken. And that's one of the most disappointing things I have learned in the past 4 years, how uneducated law enforcement is about human trafficking and even just victims in general. Yeah. And I get it. I know there's a lot of females who use their female card as an advantage when they're just upset, and that's unfortunate. But
yeah, but there's there would be a difference between like with your story, if you were in your 30s and this was happening and you were invited on a boat and you were
I was a minor.
you were a young girl, you know, that there's a big difference there. Right. And I'm not saying neither one would be right.
Right.
You know, but one thing that I do really like towards when you came back with your dad, just that safety your dad provided in a sense, like he got to be that for you then.
Yes.
You know, I relate a lot with, I mean, hard-headed, independent, you know, both of us relate to that. Like we're independent and God breaking us in a sense. So, and it taking a little while for us to just continually go back to it until we really surrender.
Yeah.
But I really like that picture of your dad kind of, I mean, it's like the father returning home.
It does.
Like
It does. So him and I did a tag team preaching not too long ago to a bunch of survivors about the prodigal son, but it was like him and I version.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was really cool. Yeah, my faith and my parents were the catalyst of what really healed me. Knowing who my identity was in Christ and what, you know, God says I am, not what this man at 14 who raped me said I was.
Yeah.
So it was just really like on rewiring my brain into understanding the fullness of who I can be and what my potential can be and just surrender.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that made a change.
Was that a slow process during that time?
Yeah. Very slow.
What was that like? You go back and you get to Chicago with your parents.
My dad was really great. I think my mom was hesitant because I just did so much damage to the family. So I think she was more reserved on like helping me heal because she was like, I'm not going to put effort into this because she's just going to leave again. But that changed over time as I stayed. But my dad was just the one who like really like cleaned up my wounds, it felt like. He was just there for me, praying over me, speaking truth into me, and just changing that mindset. So it was a lot of one-on-one time with my father. And then eventually I did go to therapy, trauma therapy, and did all the reworking of the brain through that. But it took probably at least a year before I felt normal.
What kind of trauma therapy did you go through?
It was trauma therapy specifically for sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm. Was it just talk therapy? Or
it was just talk. No, she did a little bit of EDMR.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah.
I get to, yeah.
So that was really cool. I uncovered a lot in that.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
It is. I love it.
Yeah. It's a different type of therapy.
It is. It like really just like unlocks the nuts and bolts in your head.
Yes, some subconscious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
That's where they put those nodes on your head or whatever? Is that
Yeah,
what EDMR is?
yeah, and you do like a lot of like
you?
tapping and just lights and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's different. They tried a couple different techniques on me before one was really like, we broke through.
Breakthrough.
Yeah.
Was your dad, when you came back, obviously he was taking care of you or like helping you recover? I mean, was he ever like, hey, where's this guy at? Like, how can we find this dude? Or
actually, yes and no. Like when I was like, I think he's here, he showed up. Like my dad was actually ran out of the house with I don't know what he had. He grabbed some object. But after that, he like went with me to court to do the restraining order. He went with me on the day of court because you have to go face the abuser. Like you go with the abuser in front of the judge standing next to them. And then you have to tell the judge your side of the story while he's staring at you. I'm like, what kind of effed up system is this? It's terrible. But he was there with me through that. And then afterwards, he actually just talked to me a lot about forgiveness and how, no, this person doesn't, any of these people, they don't deserve our forgiveness for what they did to you. But if we don't, we're just holding on to all of that. And it's just eating at us. So a lot of that, he's a pastor. He pastored me.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
honestly, it's the right, like, you almost have to put that to the side, that anger, rage towards that guy. to make sure and take care of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it was a lot of, too, of understanding what love was. Because for now, 14 to 27, love for me was being trafficked, being raped, being passed around, being controlled. And so he was like teaching me what actual love is through biblical teaching and just through like, have I ever done this to you? Have I ever done this to your mother? I'm like, oh, no. Okay, that's because that's not real love.
Yeah.
So just understanding what love looks like and all that good stuff.
Ooh, that'd be tough.
Yeah, especially, I mean, that's tough for you. And then, I mean, I'm obviously thinking through a father's eyes, like, I think I've been like, this is how much I love you. Here's his head on a platter. There it is.
Honestly.
Now we can forgive him. No, but yeah,
I can see my mom doing that.
Yeah. Your dad handled it the Christian way.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very pastor of
We're
him.
gonna handle it the Irish.
The Irish Christian way. You're going to pay for your sins.
Dog Saints way.
The Old Testament way.
Yes.
Wow.
So you were back at your parents' house. How long did you stay there for?
I was there, let's see, I think 26 is when I got back, and 29 is when I immersed myself in my own ministry and moved here to do work. I really wanted to come here because was like, yes, the drugs and the gang stuff started in Chicago, but this is where trafficking started for me, really.
How heavy do you think the trafficking is around here?
Oh, it's bad.
Because I've heard it's like one of the worst spots.
It is really bad.
Yeah.
Because even looking back, which was 15 years ago when I was trafficked, I was going to these $1 million houses in Destin, 30A yachts, and there were other girls with me, some younger, and it was happening to them as well.
That's wild.
And that was normal 15 years ago. I can't imagine what it's like today.
Yeah. Dude, I get that feeling around here, man, especially down in like some of those rich areas. I'm like, there's some not so good stuff going on here.
No. And like I told you guys, I live in...
People have tons of money, and then that's what buys them getting off.
They're bored.
Yeah.
Rich people are bored. And that's what they get off on.
So obviously you came here, you're living in PCB now, and then you're part of that, what's the nonprofit's name again?
Safe in the Panhandle.
Safe in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so what kind of work do you guys do around here?
Well, so for the past 4 years, I've been working just strictly with an advocacy work, which means, and with police. So I'm mentoring victims, trauma victims, or trafficking victims. So I'm helping them get the resources they need, the therapy they need, jobs, teaching them how to make a resume. Because, like I said, my biggest thing was like, what am I going to put on a resume? I'm a drug dealer. I take my clothes off. But I'm like, no, you're a business person. You know how to handle money. So I'm just helping them understand their potential. So I've been doing that for 4 years, and now I'm hopefully overseeing more education. That's my next step. So educating police officers, educating military personnel, because back up. Another time in Florida, I was trafficked through the barracks on what is it called?
Is it Hurlburt or?
Yes. Yeah. So during this time, I'm getting trafficked over here by this one guy, but I'm also dating military men because I had a thing for men in uniforms. I would get handcuffed, and these military men would come in, and they would play games like, okay, if we can guess what color thong she's wearing, then you get to rape her first, or you have sex with her first. And that was happening here. So it's going in and training the military, training police officers, training fire, what to look for. Mm-hmm. And so that's my next journey.
Most of the time when people talk about like nonprofit stuff and they say we want to raise awareness, I'm always like, what are you actually doing?
I want to actually raise awareness.
But honestly, with trafficking, I think, when I think about it in like Central America or something like that. Like I don't think about it being around here, nor did I even know how to define it really.
Yeah.
I think
started working with
I've heard that it's huge around here.
Yeah.
It's
And
modern day
I heard
slavery.
It's most of the people, there's people, like you said, is bored rich people
Yes.
that think they can do whatever they want. And then, I drive up and down the 30A, and there's nothing but young kids
Yeah.
running around. And this is also like a very safe place to
Yeah.
where you feel comfortable just
letting
your kids
go.
run free. But I think that is also a danger that no one talks about it. No one wants to talk about it because, like, oh, this place is such a blessing. I'm like, I think there's a lot of evil that goes on here too.
Oh, definitely.
That is swept under
Definitely.
the rug. And I think a lot of it is covered by churches as well.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
would
like,
agree.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that you're not only like advocating for these people, but it needs to be exposed. I mean,
Yes.
so like as far from the work that you've done so far, what have you found like some of the most common, things that go on with these girls like, around here?
So it's either one or two things. Poverty is their pimp. So they're trying to, like me many times, okay, I need to survive, I need to pay rent, let me just go dance, escort, whatever, so I could make quick cash so my kid has a roof over his head. So it's either that, poverty, or the attention. These young girls wanting attention. And so they're, doing OnlyFans and they're doing all this stuff on the internet, TikToks on the internet. They get that attention and they get lured in by men. And the average buyer, especially in this area, is a 40, 50-year-old white male with money. A doctor, a lawyer, those type of people.
So when you're helping these women that have already been sex trafficked around here, and obviously you're helping building them back up and everything, is there any like repercussions? Like, do you guys report anything? Like, hey, this is where I was trafficked.
If they are over 18, it's their choice. If they're under, we're all mandate reporters. Mass majority over 18 won't.
They won't.
They won't.
Do you think some of that's because they don't know? They wouldn't even say they've been trafficked. Like you said, you're like, I didn't know
I was trafficked until I was sitting in a seminar and a woman was talking about trafficking, and I was like, hold up.
You're like, wait a minute.
This is my story. And that was the first time I identified, and that was 9 months to a year after I got out.
Just knowing it, did that help
Oh,
free you up some?
it freed me immediately. Yeah. That was like the change in me that I was like, oh my God, this wasn't my doing. Yeah, I had a little messed up. Yes, I played a role in it. But I was manipulated by older men who should have been taking care of me. Not that it's like, some stranger's job to take care of me, but not to traffic me.
Not to take advantage
Not like,
of
oh my gosh, here's a 17-year-old girl sleeping in a car. I'm going to sell her. It should be like, do you need something?
Yeah.
Where are your parents?
Well, they're predators.
Yes.
Is what they are. They're not real men.
No.
They're people out there looking for someone to pounce
make
on
money.
and make money.
Well, and I talk to pimps and traffickers all the time, and they're like, so I would, we would ask them, like, why not sell drugs or whatever? Why women? Why'd you choose women? And because I can sell the same girl over and over and over. If I sell a dime bag, it's one time and it's gone.
It's insane.
They just tell us openly as day.
Has there been, so like you said, you've had, well, obviously for the younger women that are under 18, you're obligated to report it, right?
It.
And you said you barely have any that are over 18. Have you had any over 18? Like two? And then has there ever been like accountability? Like, all right, we know where this person is.
One of them, actually both of them, their cases are open. So I can't speak too much on of it. One of them, they're predators in jail. The other one is not. The other one is because when the police went in, they found substantial evidence of kidnapping of multiple women across the country.
And where was this guy living?
New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah. And then, how does, when law enforcement, and your experience, when law enforcement gets involved, how do they handle it?
I have worked with law enforcement that have no idea what they're doing and are unwilling to listen. Not saying that, hey, I know how to do your job better, but it's more like, hey, I have insight on this. And they're just not willing, so it's okay, good riddance, have fun. But I have also worked with some law enforcement who have been amazing, who have sat down with me, have sat down with other victims and been like, teach us. what is your thinking? What do they think? What do the pimps think? What are these traffickers thinking? And I have spent hours with them, and I have actively worked several cases with one of the police officers now. And he has been able to make several arrests based off of me going in and talking to the girls. Because I'm very well known in my community to do that. I'm in the club. The girls, people know me. They know me as a street pastor. They know me as the girl in the strip club. They just know me. So when I go up to, you know, a place where I know escorting is well known, I'm welcomed. It's not weird. So I'm like trying to tell on, like, use me. You can use me. So he has been great, and I have gone in and been able to get intel for them.
Yeah.
To prosecute some of these traffickers.
That's pretty
good.
cool, Kendra.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
Going into strip clubs, you're the street pastor.
Yeah, I love
Well,
it.
that's the places you need to go.
Yep.
So you got to go
Yeah.
into the darkness to pull people back out into
Definitely.
the light. So, I mean,
Definitely. That's all I ever wanted.
yeah.
I wanted somebody just to see me, pull me out, and care for me.
Do you
So
think,
I was
like-
I'll do that.
Do you think the big misconception of trafficking, because I think when people hear about it, like, they automatically are like, oh, I mean, like, people coming from other countries getting trafficked into this country, like, that's what people think trafficking means. But then the reality is, it's like, no, trafficking is going on in
our
all over
church.
this country. Yeah, at the church, like in churches, like that's where. And
Yes.
I think people don't want to believe
No.
that. They don't want to think that.
No.
But what is out of your experience? Do you think, and not just the churches or whatever, but you see, like, even in this area, this is considered a pristine, like,
Yeah,
great
clean-cut
area, affluent.
Right.
You know, nothing's wrong here. Everything's perfect. And how do you see it? Like, a lot of it, the majority of it, going on in places like that are just people turn a blind eye.
Especially in tourist towns.
Yeah,
It's huge. Where there's a demand, there needs to be a supply. So I think a lot of people have this understanding of trafficking as like the Taken movie. That, you know, some girl was going to Europe and
it's
a
always
European
overseas.
man
Yeah.
took her and, you know, we're going to go save her. But that's like, I think that's like 2% of what human trafficking actually is in America.
There's a lot. How much of it now is looking like getting some of these girls and then going, hey, I'm going to set up an OnlyFans for you.
Oh,
and-
that's the number one way. Chatterbait, whatever that. That's some site now that's kind of like an OnlyFans. That OnlyFans.
And they take the money.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, we'll pay you a little bit or whatever.
They'll cash up you $10. Or they'll get their nails. So that's called debt bondage. You see a lot of debt bondage in like the massage parlors. Those women are trafficked. They're brought here. That's the trafficking people are okay to accept. Like, okay, they're brought here, these, you know, Asian cultures, and they're forced into doing happy endings to make money to be in America. And that happens.
Yeah.
But like 90% of actual modern day American trafficking is by a relative or a friend.
That's wild.
That is wild. Yeah.
And they just like a grooming deal where they
Yeah.
get paid to hand them off to someone else that's going to groom them, drug
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, so one of the cases I worked a couple months ago, it was this lady, early 30s, she was beautiful. And her and her boyfriend broke up, whatever, she's homeless. So she ends up living with renting a room from a guy who's a drug dealer. And she dabbles in drugs, so she was getting supply from him. And then it was like, well, now you owe me. You owe me rent, you owe me for the food, you owe me for the gas I picked you up, you owe me for the drugs that you use. And she's like, well, I thought we were just partying. You said I could live with you. It's like, no, you owe me now. She can't pay that debt off. She doesn't have a job. So his idea, okay, we'll sleep with my friends. Have sex with them and you'll pay your debt off. So she does that. But then she's doing that. I need more drugs to cope with what just happened.
Yeah.
So it's just like this never ending
Cycle
trauma. Of debt and trauma that she can never pay off. And here 6 months later, she's completely strung out and is being trafficked all over Bay County.
What's wild is your story will speak to a woman like that, I mean, you can gain her confidence, and it'll speak to her so much more than me or like someone else coming in that doesn't have that experience like you do.
Right.
Which is, that's your ministry.
Yeah, that was, my prayer when I was in all of it towards the end. I was like, God, if you save me from this, I will dedicate my life to ministering to women like me. I will be the one to go find them and pull them out. And he pulled me out, so I was like, I got to make good on it, right? So here I am.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
your ministry would be the ministry of death.
Yeah, I'm thinking,
Well,
that's all I'm thinking about.
See my way out.
There are certain type of people that just deserve no trial, no nothing. It's like, you did this, you don't belong on this earth anymore. Because
I understand.
it's pure evil.
It is.
And I don't think there's any amount of like, oh, you're going to serve this many years in prison that's going to,
you're going to be changed.
Yeah, they're not. They're just going to get worse in prison.
Right.
In the reality of things, and I'm like, there's some people that just need to be removed from this earth, and that's people who sex traffic young girls or young boys, and then pedophiles. Like they fall into that category.
Definitely.
I don't care what people think about it. It might not be like the most Christian thing to say, but at the same time, it's like,
hey, God created people to be sheepdogs, right?
Yeah, it's
You're just like a sheepdog for humanity.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to disagree with that. I mean, especially when you have kids, it's like, hey, just the fact of the risk. Hey, maybe you would recover. Maybe you would completely change your life around. But the risk of you doing that to somebody
else,
like, sorry. I mean, it's tough. I try and be pretty reasonable about it, but like when it comes to, human life, trafficking young girls or young boys.
Right.
I think it would solve that. It would help solve that problem really fast.
Well, I think so. If you made an example and be like, this is what we do around here.
Well, and that's the thing. So I was, assaulted at 14 years old by a grown man. So 14 to 26, 27, that's a huge chunk of my life that was took from me. Yeah. All because a man made a decision to have sex with a minor. Decades of my life. Could have been very much. I could have been a dolphin trainer.
Is that what you wanted to do?
That was actually what I wanted to do as a kid.
Like Free Willy?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Then you're getting into the trafficking dolphins.
Yes. I know.
It's all about the trafficking.
It's all about it.
Well, how big of a part of you now turning around and using what all your trauma and using all that to the glory of God, like your past experience, how much of that has been a part of your recovery and growth?
I think it was a major part, like my faith was a major part of trusting in something bigger than myself. Like I couldn't heal myself. I couldn't free myself from all of this. Like I can get the science of it, of how my mind works and all of that. But without the faith and believing in God, I don't know if I would have recovered. My faith plays a huge part into who I am today. Especially, I don't know if I could go back into it and see it day in and day out. Like that, I don't know.
Well, I don't think, to recover from everything that you went through, from being trafficked, being abducted for 4 years, I don't think you can recover from that unless it's through God, like him giving you the strength each and every day. Otherwise, if people don't have that, then they turn to what got them into trafficking in the first place, which is drugs and alcohol and whatever else to make them numb. And they might think like, oh, this is the solution, but it's just going to lead you right back into the same path that you were in, and that's what the devil wants.
Exactly.
So and
I can sit here and joke with you guys about it. Like, I was taken. Like, I can't do that without God. Like, it's because I'm completely and totally 100% healed, and that's only God. Only God can do that.
Amen. Yeah, that's the
truth. I think with my story, it's different, but I mean, I look back at my life previously before coming to know the Lord, and now I want to change it because it's such a part of me, and it's what God's used
to
You know,
Exactly.
do you feel the same way?
I definitely feel the same way. That's a question I get, especially when I speak at like churches or just places. Well, do you wish it never happened? People ask me, I said, no, I don't wish, because if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't know what I know today. I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. And I wouldn't be able to show God's goodness to so many people today. So many people I meet in the clubs or on the streets or wherever, that's the hope I can bring them. Listen, I've been there too, but God has better for you. God can heal you, and God can give you a hope and a future for a much better life. He did it for me. He can do it for anybody.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of a ridiculous question to like ask, like, oh, don't you wish this never happened? It's like, I can wish all day long it happened. Like we're not in the land of make believe here. Like I can't.
I'm not saying I want to go back and I loved it, but I'm not going to wish
like,
it away either, because it built me.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, you're like, I refuse to remain in victim status, which I think that is a victim mentality. Like, oh, I wish this never happened. It's like, well,
it happened.
Did,
what are you
so
going to do with it?
Exactly. Like, how are you going to move forward with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful for people that are in it.
Yes.
Right? To go, oh, they want it traded. Like, why is this happening to me? God, why did you let that happen? All those things that they may be thinking of going, hey, maybe there's a bigger plan. It's not saying that sometimes, I mean, you made some decisions too, right? So, but.
Well, and God didn't cause it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a mentality of many people have. God let this happen to me. Well, he didn't.
No, God
Sin
gave you
happened.
free will. Yeah.
Sin happened and entered this world, and somebody used their free will to do it to you. God didn't design for our world to be this broken. It was perfect until sin entered it. And we're all just really stupid sometimes.
Yeah, we're humans. Yeah.
It's perfect like 30A. Right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. That should be a logo.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. Yes. I mean, and it is, I mean, as traumatic as it is, it's awesome to hear you like pushing forward and advocating for those that this is happening to, and actually spreading information to, you know, especially people who need it, like law enforcement.
Yes, definitely.
Knowing how to deal with those things, and
because they're the front lines and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Hospitals, ERs.
Yeah, and that's stuff that people don't. I mean, people don't think about because they don't know about it. Right. It's no fault of their own. They're just ignorant to it a lot of the times.
Perish for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you're sharing it here, because who knows who it'll reach.
Yeah, I hope it does.
Yeah.
Hope it helps somebody.
Yeah.
At least learning.
100%.
Well, yeah, I mean, we got to hold ourselves, like this country, to a standard. And we can't allow things like that to go on. I mean, I've been to other countries. I mean, like, you know, Afghanistan, that's accepted there. I mean, it's not, and it's not even looked at like
it's not wrong.
Twice. It's like, yeah, this is, I mean, we watched, and that was a hard part of being over there, is because you have to sort of embed yourself in their culture to get certain information and all that stuff. So you see the way that they live, and we watched little boys get trafficked right in front of us. A lot of the times at these meetings that we'd have to have with them, and having to bite your tongue and just like, you know, clench your jaw. Like, dude, I'm watching this and I can't. There was one person, I remember some Green Beret did something about it. He ended up killing one of the guys, and then they tried to throw him in prison here for murder. And that's where I'm talking about there has to be a standard. Like, are we for this, or are we like against it? Which one is it? We can't, there's no gray area in this. It's a right and wrong scenario.
Well, and I think that's the biggest fight that we have, is because, I hope I don't get shot saying this, so much of our government is involved.
Yes.
And I know that because I've spent time with the victims. It's not some conspiracy theory. I have had women who have told me about involvement that they've had with the government. I've met survivors who were survivors of Epstein. I've met survivors who were survivors of politicians. And it's like, why we can't do anything. We can do a small part, but it's like if it's being endorsed by mega people.
Yeah. And then being swept under the rug when they get caught. So then if we're doing that, it's just going to trickle down to, you know, people in government that have the power, that have the money. They're doing it and getting away with it. And it's frontline news where like, you know, everyone's like, where's the Epstein list? That's never going to
Right.
come out because there's people on both sides of the aisle who have been to that island and have done those things. And people know it. It's not, people aren't dumb.
No.
So when you see that and you don't see anybody held accountable, that trickles down to the rest of society. Like, well, if they're able to do it and get away with it, then what I'm doing is not wrong either. So, and
Right.
I think it's just, it sets a trend,
Yeah.
which is why I'm big on like, no, an example has to be made. It's whether,
Right. I get you.
yeah,
I get you.
put some gallows in the front lawn of the White House and do some hangings.
I mean, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Leave them there for about a week.
He's like, awesome.
Our audience, if you knew our audience,
I'm good.
you're not going to get shot for
Okay.
that. Everyone will agree with you.
But yeah, I've gone to several retreats all over the country, meeting victims of all over the country.
What so when we talk about like the government, sex trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the stories you've heard? Is it like politicians?
A lot of politicians, a lot of just really high named lawyers, and like I said, I've met victims of Epstein, and
Yeah.
they have pictures.
Of like big names that people would know.
No, they have pictures of their trafficking, and it's being ignored.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. That's the hardest thing for victims is we can provide all the evidence, but if we don't have people making enough noise for us, we just get swept away.
Yeah, I think, and that's why, like you talked about earlier, like there's people that don't even want it. Like, oh, I'm not going to come forward, and that's probably a huge factor in it. Is like, well, I've seen this girl come forward, and nothing's
Right.
being done. So
Right.
why would I come forward and say this? You know,
Right.
and put myself in danger.
Didn't several Epstein's victims come forward? I mean, like 10 years before any of that stuff come out, and like police were called out, and nothing
came of
happened. Or there's several times I think.
Yeah.
Money can buy anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's why it's the root of all evil.
Yep.
true. The love and money.
Yep.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you guys. It was
Yeah,
great
I
being
appreciate you coming on.
here.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you grow in your ministry. I look forward to
Yes.
see. I know the stuff that we have planned
Yeah.
with Safe.
Yeah, I'm
And
excited.
I look forward to seeing all the women that God will use you to impact. So,
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
awesome.
Thank you.
Out.
We're out.